No, you're live.
You're live.
Welcome
So,
back, Wolfpack. Dire Wolf here. I had to start the show that way.
Trevises is mostly.
Okay, so we're going to be doing a great topic about some COVID-19, the China virus, the Wu flu studies that come out that the media have been going all gaga for, and we're going to be talking about that. But before we get to that, we have a really important, I'd say crucial story from Fox Trevize here,
Yeah,
who is also
so
my co-host.
I is your co-host. So Minnesota. Can't live with it. Can't live without it. So I was flying one time through a very convoluted route that involved 3 connections of flights to get back to my destination, and one of them was through Minnesota. But prior to that, that was my second of 3 connections. I wasn't sure where I was before that, and it didn't really matter because I was just connecting. It didn't matter where I was landing. I just needed to know what gate I needed to go to next, right? So I landed. We debarked from the plane, and I walked out, and the first thing I saw in the terminal upon debarking from the plane was a giant.
Disembarked? Debarked?
It's my story. Fuck you.
Okay.
It was a giant wooden chainsaw statue of a moose, and that was enough for me to realize, oh, I'm in Minnesota.
Minnesota.
I required 0 other context clues other than a giant chainsaw moose. Also anthropomorphized.
Really?
Yes.
Was it?
Yes.
Oh my.
Yeah. If you land in Minneapolis, which I like at the time, I now know for sure. I thought I knew at the time, but I knew I was connecting to Minneapolis, and I was like, I don't know what state Minneapolis is in. I think I know, but it's entirely irrelevant because I'm just connecting through there. And other than for Minneapolis International, Minnesota has 0 relevance to anyone that lives in America.
As a general rule, never Minnesota, not even once.
I did go there once, and it was a giant fucking wooden moose. I just remember distinctly in my head. I was like, I don't know where I'm at. I don't remember which state I'm in, because I was coming from international. I was coming from abroad, and I just knew I was connecting through Minneapolis. And I was like, I don't remember. I vaguely remember, but I don't remember specifically what state Minneapolis is in. And then I saw that moose, and I was like, oh, okay. Minnesota, obviously. So
if you need any reason to not want to go to Minnesota, just remember that one of their House reps, the 5th District House rep, is Ilhan Omar.
Are you fucking kidding me? Why did she go there? It's fucking cold there. I figure she wants somewhere
there's
warm.
a very large Somali and also Muslim population.
I understand that. But I would have figured that, just hot take here, that they would have preferred somewhere warmer. But I'm gonna stop thinking about that.
What, hell?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
You said it, not me. Okay, are you guys ready for this show?
I'm not sure I like how you are assuming the gender of our audience.
What? Oh, you guys. I said
you guys.
Yeah. That's my bad. Yeah.
That's pretty bigoted of you. We're going to do a retraction now.
Yeah. I probably assumed most of you are straight, too. That's just it's my heteronormative bias. Even the gays have a heteronormative bias. Probably especially.
Yeah, well, I mean, isn't gay men just misogyny in its purest form anyways?
It absolutely is. I'm not as gay as I am a misogynist. I just fucking hate women so much that I only have sex with men.
Out of spite.
Yes, out of spite. It's nothing to do with my preference. It's just that I dislike women so much, and I want to disadvantage them from the glory that is me, that I have limited myself only to men. It's really a sacrifice on my part.
Every time you're balls deep in a dude, you're actually thinking about how sad it is making women that you're not having sex with them.
And how else do you think I get off?
That's the only thing it would make sense. You couldn't possibly be attracted to men. That's crazy, right?
Well, I relative to my hatred for women, yes. It's really like a parlor trick. It's like a hologram. Like I just think I'm hypnotized. All right, I am, as you guys may have already gathered, little drunk. Dyer is not.
I'm not. But I'm willing to get there for $10 per shot of Jim Beam.
Oh, okay. So Dyer has come prepared. I have come preloaded. I was at a Zoom birthday party prior to this. Where
by the way, honey, I'm drinking tonight. She didn't know that part.
Okay. We are doing live tonight instead of last night because of my fault. So we are, and I'm also going to continue to drink after I already drank a lot before this. But we have this very important topic to discuss tonight, which is a lot of studies. There's been a lot of studies during the coronavirus, but especially this week, there was a lot of studies that came out, and a lot of them are a lot of shit. There's just really shit science that came out, and so we're going to go through those. One of the reasons why we didn't do this last night is because this is probably a little bit more of a technical discussion than what we normally have had. There's a lot more numbers, a little more science-y stuff. We're trying to. We've made sure to make sure that it's consumable by the average man, but and or woman. But these are studies that the media has taken the headline of and just run really, really far with, and they are just absolutely untrue headlines based on the study that they're referencing, and then even within the study, the conclusion that the study reaches, the data within the study does not support the conclusion that they drew. Now, we're going to talk at the end of this about why we think these studies came out so biased. Spoiler alert, Orange Man bad. But one of the reasons why we didn't do this last night is because there's a lot of technical details, and I really screwed one of them up last night. It didn't mess up my overall conclusion, but on a technical sense, I did something very wrong that it was not ready to present last night. So why we didn't present last night was my fault, but we wanted to do this the right way, so we waited till tonight to do it. So you guys get the full glory of good sciences. Let's see here. So Krieg's watching. Krieg's gender is gay wolf. That's true. Alrighty. So Dyer.
Be gone from me, you
Yes.
soy boy beta cock. The
first
transaction
study
is
we're gonna go
Wow.
That'll be 10 drinks, Dyer. Here to help.
I
What?
will share you the audio and video because Krieg Blackpaw, who I may just pull into the call because of that.
Oh,
Krieg just
my.
gave us $100.
Fucking hell. Okay.
He says,
So I have.
that'll be 10 drinks, Dyer. Here to help. Krieg, my boy. We love you, boy.
We might need Krieg after that, by the way.
Yeah, Krieg.
That is disgusting.
If you text me on Skype, you are more than welcome to join the show, such as it is. Let's see here. All right, did you get my screen here?
What?
Did you get my screen?
Your screen.
My screen. I shared it to you. Dyer.
I'm seeing it. Yes.
Dyer just thinking about 10 drinks has gotten him 10 drinks worth of drunk. So.
No, I'm still working on it.
Alrighty, Krieg, we love you. Thank you for the donation, much appreciated.
All $100 of that's going to go towards buying masks for the local military base.
That is true. Would you like to discuss that real quick?
Yeah. So any donations you guys make on today's show and tomorrow's show, whether it's buying alcohol or not, is going to be used to buy some protective masks for the guys on my base. Because even though we are procuring a lot of them, we're just not procuring them fast enough for the people who, like everyone on base and some of the civilians that work on base. And they're $10 a piece. So I just bought 10 of them. Thank you very much, Krieg.
Now, Krieg says he has to go to bed tonight, but Krieg, if you would like to be on tomorrow's show, we'd love to have you, as we always do. So please hit me up if you'd like to be on tomorrow's show. We will just call you anyways and force you at gunpoint.
Gunpoint.
Yes. Both Dyer and Krieg have a lot of guns, so I guess we'll get to see who wins. But I think Krieg is going to have to stream tomorrow. So, but yeah, that sounds like a good plan. The military is obviously very important, but the need for the masks, that's about as important as like making sure that they have like guns and ammo and like body armor at this point. The coronavirus has unfortunately like decommissioned a few of our aircraft carriers. Not fully, like they're still operational. We can do what we need to do. China knows we can do what we need to do, regardless of if CNN is going to post their propaganda. And let's be honest, China only has what, 1 or 2 aircraft carriers that are much smaller than even our smallest one. So we're still dominant, but we've had to shuffle a lot of pieces around because of the virus. So we
have a destroyer that can rival their carrier.
Yeah. So China as whole, but we also, even at a significantly, even unsignificantly reduced capacity, are still very, very adversarial to them. And let's be honest, nobody believes that their ships don't have cases on them. But regardless, every time we can get the masks on our military guys, any of the bases, obviously they all contribute to national security, definitely helping out there. So we much appreciate those donations. And thank you, Krieg.
Thank you.
You good boy, Krieg. Good boy. I know you like that. Good boy, Krieg. All right, so moving on. Eventually, we'll have to get into what our topic is. So that point is now. So our topic tonight is, so Dyer discusses bad science. So there's been a lot of bad science that's come out this week. As I said earlier, there've been a lot of studies that have come out this week that have suggested a lot of things that are hopeful. I would really like if they were true. The problem is that they are just not true. So of the studies that have come out, there's been 3 studies now. Even yesterday, like one more came out today. Yesterday it would have only been 2. Today it's been 3 studies that have said that COVID-19, or the China virus, is a lot more widespread than what we originally thought. So we always knew this, that there's a lag in testing. So the numbers that are reported, the case numbers that are reported on something like Worldometer, which is backed by John Hopkins Hospital, which is obviously a very, very well-known hospital. That website has basically got the official count worldwide for whatever the official count for each country is. So we've known for a long time that the official counts are definitely lagging behind the real counts, just because not everyone's able to get tested. Testing is lagging. Testing is concentrated in hot spots. If you're a little bit sick and you've got symptoms, but you're not like dying, you're probably not going to get a test. You're probably just going to get the care and treatment that you probably need, but it's not really relevant if you get tested or not. But those testing numbers, those infection rates, are just the tests. So again, like I said, we've known that the real rate of infection is probably a lot higher than that. So there have been 3 studies that have come out this week that have suggested that the real infection rate is not only a little bit higher than what the tests show, but a lot a bit higher, as much as 50 to 60 to 70 times what the testing suggests. So because there's 3 studies and there's a lot of data to go through, we only had time to go through one of them. But what we want to
Be gone from me, you soy boy beta cock. The transaction is complete.
Oh,
10 drinks for Fox. Don't get left out, you Viking Fox.
So Timberwolf has given me 10 drinks for $100, which means I will have to chug this beer. I've already, Timber, had a whole bottle of wine, but I will go get, after I chug this beer, I will go get a something else to drink. I don't. I'll have to go look through my cabinet real quick, but I'll let you know. This is gonna end up being like a 5-hour just Dyer and I incoherent stream. There may or may not be a stream tomorrow.
Okay, so before we move on, so right now we have a problem in the U.S. with determining what or doing any studies on only local data because we've done a really bad job at collecting data. Early on, we had ineffective and testings that provided false positives, right? And just didn't work in general. And then since then, it took us quite a long time to get any real testing. Doing 100,000 tests a day now, after months of spread without any proper testing, and with a population of our country, is not enough. So we have far less of by percentage of our nation tested, and because of that, it's less about having enough data to analyze. It's more about reading tea leaves, and you'll see when we get into it, some of the studies they're using aren't using the available data and then extrapolating from that, any like real conclusion. They're basing it off of a very limited and very biased set of data. And so the local studies we've done in the U.S., because of our poor management and our poor ability to actually collect data, has resulted in very erroneous results.
And one of the things why we want to go through this is because it's not just the mainstream media that is taking these signs. So to kind of like lay it out for you. So, what? You okay?
Disgusting.
You are disgusting. I am, by the way, I am drinking, which Timberwolf, you should at least know what this is because you're in my region. I'll be disappointed if you don't. I am drinking Dirtwolf double IPA, which is from Victory, and it is 12%. And when you gave me that, I had just cracked it open, and I'm going to chug the rest of this for the next 5 minutes here. So that's a lot of alk there. Well, one of the reasons why I want to go through this is not just there's a lot of layers here, unfortunately. So you've got bad science, which we're going to go through here. We're going to go through why these studies suck. And it's not just us these are just like conspiracy theory stuff. No, like we're going to go through why specifically and logically and why the layman can look at these studies and realize like, oh, wow, those are really bad studies. And on top of those bad studies that you're not going to know unless you go back and read the original papers that are being published, on top of those studies, you've got the mainstream media is running with these really unsubstantiated conclusions that these papers are drawing, these conclusions that the data they're reporting does not support, that even their internal methodology, as they've stated it, doesn't support their conclusions. Therefore, it's bad science. You've got the media running with those unsupported conclusions and re-sensationalizing them even harder, trying to say, oh, well, basically everyone in the United States has already had the coronavirus. Therefore, the mortality rate is really less than the flu. And in addition to that, there's also a lot. It like physically hurts me when I have to say this. There's a lot of people that are supposedly on, now I'm not even going to say the right, but like the anti-leftist, the anti-SJW side of the aisle, the rationalists, the centrists, the intellectual dark web, and also obviously the conservatives. There's a lot of people on that side of the fence that are also taking these sensational mainstream media headlines and running with them as though they were true. And if you run it all the way back to the original science papers, which is what we are going through today, we are going to go through the base research that was published that is the origin point for all of these things, all of these mainstream media headlines, all of this conservative angst. We are going to go through the basic of that, the origin point. It's all based on bad science. And so you've got the mainstream media broadcasting out all this junk nonsense. And you also have the conservative media broadcasting out this junk nonsense. For some reason, Dyer and I are the only ones who can do the math. And we're going to go through here and explain to you the math is very, very simple. Other people could have gone through this, but they did not. So, first up. Dyer, do you want to read this first up here on the Santa Clara here? Our first study here?
Sure. So, Santa Clara County antibody test. University of Southern California recently released the results of an antibody test performed in Santa Clara County, which has a population of 1.9 million, by the way, California. Antibody tests are meant to show if anyone has already had the virus, because if you had the virus, your body produces antibodies to fight the virus, and those antibodies stay in your body afterwards to fight the virus if you get reinfected. The aim was to determine if China virus had silently passed through the greater population of a greater portion of the population than previously thought. If true, then this would mean that the true mortality rate was far lower than previously thought, and that most people would have little or no symptoms from the virus. This would be really great news if it was true, but is it? We will get to that in a second, but first, let's look at how the media reported this claim that the study may or may not have actually stated that far more people were infected than actually we believe were before.
We'll just go back and forth on this one. So, Mercury News. More than 84,000 already infected in Santa Clara.
Also, they said in that same news reporting that Stanford research concludes.
Concludes! That's very definitive. That's very definitive, right?
That's very definitive. It's also not the wording of the study, I believe. That was completely from the Mercury News, not from the study. That it was concluded, that's absolutely true, that the infection rate is far higher. Also said that the results reveal between 48,000 and 81,000 people in Santa Clara may have been infected. Wait a minute. How can it be concluded and also may?
Well, it'll be May next month. Maybe that's what they meant. Reason from Reason magazine. Lethality not much different than the flu, says new study. Does it say
Be
that?
gone from me, you soy boy beta cock. The transaction is complete.
My goodness.
Here's some mask money. No drinks, be grateful.
Oh, okay. Well, less my goodness, but thank you, my goodness. Shadow Wolf.
Thank you.
Has given us $20. He says,
Appreciated.
Here is some for the masks. No money. Masks money. Here is some for the masks money. No drinks. Be grateful.
I'm grateful. I'm still working on my
Yeah, I got about 3 fingers left, Timber, on my what was a full bottle of 12%. I will have that chugged in the next 2 minutes here. Possibly now. All right.
So, Reason Magazine saying that the lethality it definitively is no different from the flu because of the study. And does the study actually say that? That's the question, right?
No. All right. So, what the study actually says. Okay, so the Santa Clara study. So there was 3 major studies that came out this week. I just want to like reiterate which one we're looking at. So the 3 studies that came out this week, you probably have heard some news about what we're talking about, that there was studies that showed there was more of the population than what was previously thought that had been infected and they had no symptoms. So there was 3 main studies that we know of. That was the LA County study. LA County, obviously California. Santa Clara County, California. And then the New York City, New York study. So the one that we're looking at is the Santa Clara County, California study. So we're not looking at the other ones. There's basically the exact same stuff that's wrong with the Santa Clara one. Ooh. You know I'm drinking because it's burped. basically the exact same things we're about to say that are wrong with the Santa Clara study. Those are wrong with the other two studies, but we did not have time to go through all of them. So again, we're looking at studies that were put together. We got 3 different studies that were put together with a whole suite of scientists. Each one had an independent suite of scientists, like a whole bunch of them. And then each one was reported on by a whole bunch of mainstream media sources, all of which have millions, billions of dollars of journalism money at their disposal. Dyer and I have tens of dollars that you guys have just gracefully given us. We much thank you for that.
We don't deserve it.
We do not deserve it. We've only gone through the Santa Clara one. So if you want to look at what we're talking about, the Santa Clara study is the only one that we're going to go through. The other studies have similar results to the Santa Clara study. And so when we debunk the Santa Clara study, as we're about to do, it calls into question the results of the other studies. So just keep that in mind here. And it blows my mind that no one else is picking up on these things, because there's very, very simple mathematics that don't line up. And we're gonna get to that, so stay with us here. But that's that. I just want to give you guys a kind of a baseline of where we're coming from on this and why we're talking about this. And basically, the kind of spoiler alert is, we really, really do, and it pains me. I really wish that the studies showed that the mortality rate was lower, that the infection rate was higher than we thought it was. There was no symptoms. The studies don't show that. I wish there was, and if there is a study that shows that, I really, really want to see that, and we would report on it. This is not a fear porn channel. We would report on that if we could, but we're not seeing it in the ones that are currently being reported.
Yeah, but what you gotta do when you receive a study for anything, whether it supports your opinion or is opposed to your opinion or what you want to be true, you need to actually evaluate how the study was done, because a study that's done with a really bad methodology or has no controls or a bad sample size is useless and can come up with really erroneous results. And it's important that you, when you're looking at a study, you don't just take their conclusion, but see how they came to that conclusion.
Yes. All right. So, Santa Clara study. You guys want to follow along? Santa Clara study tested 3,330 people. They came back. This was for antibodies. So this was if they had been infected with COVID long enough that they had developed an antibody response to it. So basically, if you get COVID, you're either going to develop an antibody response to it, or you're going to die. That's like the two options. So they tested 3,330 people. They came back with 50 people who had an antibody response to the China virus. This infection rate means that 1.5% of their sample population had the virus and recovered from it and had an antibody response to it. They extrapolated from this that the total infections from the Santa Clara County, I got that wrong in the notes. Santa Clara County, they used some statistics. So as 1.5% of their sample in Santa Clara County had the virus, they used a statistical technique to extrapolate that the real infection rate in Santa Clara County was 2.49 to 4.16%. This means that they are assuming that the infection rate in Santa Clara County is double to nearly triple what their sample shows. Remember that part for later.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but their methodology, which I believe was used in a couple of other studies, exactly the same way, was they said, okay, well, the Santa Clara County is predominantly white and predominantly wealthy, but other studies have shown that black people get sick at a higher rate, and we have people who are poor who get have a higher lethality rate as well. So it's not get sick, have a higher death rate. Is that what percentage they weighed in?
No, so there was the reason why they reweighted it to be higher. We'll get into that in a little bit later. The testing method. So there's you guys probably heard the term like test kits. So the term test kits has been primarily used to talk about detecting the viral the virus in your blood, the actual viral RNA. So there's test kits for the antibodies too, and so the test kits to detect the antibodies. There's a couple of different methods to do it. Like same thing with the virus. There's some of them that take like 5 or 6 weeks to do it. There's some of them that can do it in 5 minutes in that magic machine that Trump was talking about. It's the same thing with the antibodies. It's just a typical blood test. There's a couple different ways you can do it. And so there is, I know I've seen reported at least 10 different antibody tests for coronavirus. Mm-hmm. So the one that they used for this particular study, it has a false negative rate and also a false positive rate. So a false negative is that it says you don't have coronavirus when you really do. It's a false negative rate. They also have a false positive rate where it says that you have coronavirus or you had coronavirus when you really didn't have coronavirus. So the particular test that they chose had a really, really wide margin of error. We don't have charts for like specific data that was collected. Again, this is something that it's a lot of data to go through. Dyer and I are 2 people. We don't have a lot of funding, and we don't do this full time. We are trying our best to bring you guys the best possible analysis of this data that we can. There's other groups and other channels that are bringing a better, more full-time response to this that you can follow. I would recommend Peak Prosperity. That's where we're getting some of this, some of these leads on. But again, this is something you guys need to be looking through, and this is not something that the mainstream media is reporting on, even though it is things that are true. So this particular test that they used, from what I've seen, from what has been reported, this is on the lower end of accuracy. It reports a lot more false positives than it does false negatives. So from my understanding, it reports about 0.05% false positives. So if you're positive, it will most likely be positive on this test. 99.5% of the positives from this test will actually be positive. On the negative rate, though, not as good. The particular test that the Santa Clara County study used has a 32% false negative rate. That means if you tested negative on the particular test kit that they used, then you had a 32% chance of actually having been positive, and this test missed it. So the reason why this study overestimated the actual count, so the actual count from this study was 1.5% of those that were sampled. They extrapolated that to be 2.5 to 4.16% because it had a higher false negative rate. The problem is, though, it's fine that they tried to adjust it statistically. I don't fault them for that. It's just the data that they had to work with. The problem is, though, 32% false negative and 0.5% false positive. That's too high. In my opinion, And in a lot of scientific research opinion, that is too high of an error rate to actually draw a conclusive opinion from. It's too high to derive a conclusive result from. If you get a result from that data, you have to give it an extremely large margin of error.
And it could be any number within that margin of error could be the real answer.
Yes.
And so it's basically useless for any kind of actionable information because it can have such a wide range of possible answers along that graph. And then, even then, look at the sample size. We're talking about only 3,300. When you're trying to get a representative sample of the entire United States, that's way too small of a sample size. And who's saying that Santa Clara or the people that they were testing are, represent the rest of the country in their demographics and such?
Exactly. And we're going to get into whether or not this sample size was representative of the demographics. It is absolutely not representative. So, for Timber's benefit, I have finished my beer. I'm going to go grab another, again, regular sized bottle of beer, but also 12.1% alcohol content that I just chugged. I'm going to grab one of those while Dyer reads what I just highlighted. I'll be back in like 60 seconds, Dyer.
All right. So, given that given that there have only been 50 reported deaths in Santa Clara County at the time of the study, and given that the infection range of 2.49% to 4.16%, which, by the way, again, a huge window, it would mean that there are about 48,000 to 82,000 infections in LA County. Based on those stats, the media has concluded that this means that the mortality rate of the China virus is not 2.223%, but rather 0.05 to 0.15%. That would be fantastic. I would love for the death rate, the mortality rate of the China virus to be that low, to be even though it's still quite a range, going from 0.05 to 0.15 is a huge window for it to possibly fall in. But it would put it, possibly rivaling that of a normal flu, and that would be great because it means less people dying. Except for the study is total bullshit. The problems. First problem. Who was in the sample this study looked at? That's very important. Your sample size and what makes up your sample. What are your, how representative is your sample of the population you're trying to compare it to is very important. The direct from the study itself, as posted on MedRx IV, participants were recruited using Facebook ads targeting a representative sample of the country by demographics and geographic characteristics. End quote. Facebook ad respondents a random representative sample that does not make. It has been speculated by others, and I agree, that people who were most likely to respond to the testing request were people who believed themselves to have been exposed, while people who did not think they had been exposed would have been far less likely to risk going to get tested, to go to testing locations where they may be putting themselves at risk of exposure again. Due to the low availability of testing, if you were not presenting symptoms, people who think they were exposed but may have
is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Slowpoke just gave us $2. Says, Dyer! DM'd you earlier today, and you didn't respond. I needs cuddles.
Where did you DM me?
Soy boy crying. I made you come. Don't ignore me.
Okay.
That's something that's a you thing.
I will have to sort that out later.
Timberwolf, I sent you pictures of your $100 worth of my drinks. Thus upside down bottles, and plus another one that is right side up that still has alcohol in it. Enjoy.
I also sent you a package, Timberwolf. My package was mailed to you. So I know. Let me pick up where I left off. So due to how there's been not a lot of tests available, and they've only been giving those tests out to people who are actually showing symptoms. So people who wanted to get themselves tested but were not showing symptoms yet, well, this is one of their few options they had to get a free test, right? So
yeah, there was like if you can't if you thought you got exposed. And like you try to call your hospital, especially in a hotspot area, which all of California is a hotspot area. Your local hospital is like, we don't got tests for you. Like unless you're dying, unless you're coming in because you cannot breathe, we're not going to test you. Like we just don't have resources for that. Now the administration has done a lot to get testing more widely available, but not enough so that the hotspots have on-demand testing. And so that's one of our concerns. That's been a concern that was brought up by the paper itself, that and a lot of other medical experts, that because they used Facebook ads to try to recruit participants instead of an actual random sample, then you're obviously going to have people that are going to respond to that Facebook ad. One, you're going to have people that are on Facebook, which, like, I don't know, if you're on Facebook, like, you are part of the population that is a dweeb. not a regular part of the population.
You're not people.
Yeah, you're not real fucking people. You're just fucking drunk. Anyways, but like the people that responded to that Facebook ad, like, hey, do you want to be part of this test? Do you want to be part of the study that is testing to see if you already had COVID? If you saw that on Facebook and you would see that ad on Facebook and you would think one of two things. Like, man, I have had to go to work or to the grocery store or to whatever my personal situation is, and like, man, I really think I got exposed and I just don't know, but I think I got exposed. Or you could be one of the people that are like, you know what? I got a job. I can work from home. I have not gone out to see my family, and you know what? I don't think I got exposed. I've been home locked up for 20 days plus. I really don't think I got it. So when you see that Facebook ad, if you think you're in a situation where you got exposed, then you know that if you call up the testing hotlines, as much as Trump, as much as the administration would like to tout that there is wide availability for testing, it's just not true. I wish it was. Especially maybe in some of your rural areas, a lot of your flyover country, it probably is true. Hotspots, it's just not true. California, just not true. New York, just not true. If you want to get a test and you are not showing symptoms, you're not going to get a test in those coastal areas. Maybe if you're lucky, likely not. Especially during the time scale this test was taking place, this study was taking place. A lot of these people probably saw this Facebook ad, and if they thought that they had been in a situation where they had been infected with coronavirus, excuse me, that's Timber's fault. He paid $100 to hear me hiccup. If they thought that they were in a situation where they had been infected with coronavirus, then they would see this as an opportunity to get a test when they know that they could otherwise not get a test because they weren't showing symptoms. And so if they saw this Facebook ad and they thought that they had been infected with coronavirus, they were more likely to have responded to the ad and volunteered to be a part of the study. Now, on the alternative, if you had the blessing to be able to social distancing at a strong enough level that you were pretty sure that you had not been exposed to coronavirus. I fortunately am lucky enough to have been in a situation where I'm pretty sure I have not been exposed to coronavirus. I had to go out yesterday to go grocery shopping and to go to an emergency dentist appointment, which was not fun. But prior to that time, I will admit I'm a very lucky minority of people that was able to work from home before that. And even after going out, I'm pretty sure that I kept myself safe enough that I was not infected. But I know that there's a lot of people that were not in my position. But people like me, if I see a Facebook ad, which I never would because I'm not on Facebook, because I'm not a fucking dweeb. Anyways, I would never see a Facebook ad. If I had seen a Facebook ad that was offering to have me in one of these studies where I would need to go somewhere to get tested, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't accept it because I wouldn't want to risk going to a testing location and getting infected because I'm already pretty sure that I'm not infected. So this study has likely a very skewed set because the primary recruitment method was through advertising. I think it's very easy to conclude that they had a highly skewed sample set that consisted mainly of people who had recently been in situations where they believed that they could have been infected. There is no way to conclusively say that for sure, but there's also no way to conclusively say the opposite and conclusively say that a Facebook advertisement campaign would yield a truly random sample set of Santa Clara County.
Precise. Anyways, are we on this one now?
Yeah,
Yep. Okay,
you can read that one.
So, according to Nature, probably the best-known science journal, the accuracy of the test kits is highly questionable, to put it lightly. The specific test kits used had a 0.5% false positive rate, as we discussed before, and a 32% false negative rate, as we also discussed. This creates a very noisy sample set with a lot of error that is impossible to remove. There's no way to just use math to make that error rate disappear. That makes it very difficult to draw any kind of reliable conclusions, or really any conclusion. You basically have limited the possible results, the possible true answer, to a wide swath of data.
Yeah. So let's assume that this data set is true. So, and that's what we're going to go through here. So there's been a lot of mainstream media and a lot of conservative / centrist / intellectual dark web media that has taken these studies and really run with them. In particular, I know Crowder has, I know Tucker has, I know Tim Pool has, I know Stex Hexenhammer has, been others. I think that those names kind of represent a pretty wide swath of the political compass. They have all taken these studies, the Santa Clara study and the LA County study and the New York study. They've all taken these and run with them. Again, what we're trying to do is show that these studies, the origin of these studies, doesn't line up. So, if the Santa Clara study was true, then that shows that Santa Clara's mortality rate is 0.15%. At most. At most. It could be lower than that based off the range that they gave. We're looking at the worst case scenario, which is 0.15%. The flu is 0.1% mortality rate. If you get the flu, you got a 0.1% chance of dying. What the Santa Clara study is suggesting, what some of these other studies are suggesting, is that the mortality rate for COVID-19, the mortality rate for the China virus, is 0.15%. We're going to go through why we don't think that's true. So, that was extrapolated from that study. So, we know that 10,889 people have died in New York City.
The city, not state.
Yeah, city, not state. In New York City, 10,889 people have died already. And that is as of yesterday, I believe.
It was updated an hour ago.
Okay, so as of today. So, using the Santa Clara study of 0.1.5 mortality, if that's true, and if we know for sure that 10,889 people have died in New York City, then how many people in New York City would have had to have been infected to see that death rate? So we've got X infected. What is their X number? How many people were infected in New York times 0.1.5 mortality equals 10,889 dead people in New York City. Well, X would have to equal 7.26 million, and then using the range, which I don't have in the previous numbers, but using the range that the Santa Clara County study gave us, the infection rate in New York would have had to have been between 7.26 million and 21.78 million people. Would have had to have been infected over the range that Santa Clara County gave us to equal 10,889 people dead in New York City. The problem is, New York City population is only 8.4 million people. So, maybe there's, on the low end, there's 7.26 million people in New York City that were infected, and they got 1 million left to go. And that's why we saw almost 11,000 dead. Or on the high end, that you had 22 million people infected in New York, which is impossible because there's not 22 million people in New York. So the problem is, and there's a slight margin of error here. There is about 1 million people of error here, between 7.26 million people on the lowest end, and the actual number of New York City population, which is 8.4. There's a slight margin of error there for about a little over 1 million people. But basically, if you want to believe the Santa Clara County study, you have to also believe that the vast, vast, vast majority of New York City has already been infected. But that also brings with it the idea that if the vast majority of New York City has already been infected, and the mortality rate is really only at max 0.15%, then you also have to believe that the deaths in New York City must be close to an end. They must be on the verge of coming to a complete stop, because by this theory, the theory that the Santa Clara County study has proposed, that the mortality rate is only 0.15%. If you believe that, then you also have to believe that the majority of New York has already been infected, and thus you must also believe that the deaths must be very nearly to come to a complete stop on that. We're not seeing that. We're seeing a level rate. They have flattened the curve, and God bless them for that. New York has flattened the curve. They are not seeing an increase in daily deaths.
They had 437 today.
Yes.
The last 24 hours.
Yes.
Deaths. Just the city.
Yeah, just the city. And typically the city is looking at about 100 deaths per day. That's something that we've talked about on, I think about 3 weeks ago, we talked about on the show. Where we went through that, because there was people that were discussing, they're just relabeling car crashes and heart attacks, and your parachute didn't deploy. Everything under the sun is now being declared COVID-19. We show that just wasn't true, because the average death rate on an average day per the CDC in New York City was 100 people, and we're consistently seeing. Prior to this week, we were looking at like 600 to 700 to 800 people per day. Thank God. And we're not sitting here doing fear porn. We love, as much as all you guys love to see, we really, really are loving seeing the rate fall, the daily rate fall down to what'd you say it was, Dyer? About 400?
437 today.
Yeah, so 437 people today. That is 337 more people that died today than what the average daily death rate in New York City was last year. The average daily death rate in New York City was 100. Now, again, you look 2-3 weeks ago, the average daily death rate in New York City was, 600-700 people, but that was from COVID. We love seeing that number come down, but just the fact that it's coming down doesn't change the fact it's really high. And so if the Santa Clara study was true, if the mortality rate was 0.15, we would expect to see the mortality rate. We would expect to see the daily death rate in New York really close to 100. Again, at the lowest, most conservative end of this study, which is, I believe, at the the lowest of the Santa Clara study shows that the mortality rate would be 0.05%, which would mean that 21.78 million New Yorkers would have had to have been infected. So just looking at New York alone, we know that the Santa Clara rate must be lower, because we can be pretty sure that all New Yorkers were not infected. But had all New Yorkers been infected, had all 8.4 million New Yorkers been infected, we know that the death rate would have been more than 0.05%.
Keep in mind, if you're assuming that the best possible number of there being 7.26 million people that were already infected out of the total population of 8.339 million, you're assuming that with all the draconian measures they've had, right, and the lockdowns, basically almost everyone got infected, despite their very, very tight lockdown. I have trouble believing that.
Yes. Triumvirate asked a question if this was the first, second, or third study. Triumvirate, I know this was in the first two studies. The first two studies that came out domestically, and Dyer's going to go through later. There's a lot of international studies that really, really conflate with these studies. There was
conflict.
Yes, they contradict. Three studies in America that we know of were the Santa Clara study, the LA County study, and the New York study. So LA County and Santa Clara County are both in California. The reason why we didn't do this last night is because when I was looking at the numbers, I mixed up the numbers from Santa Clara and LA County. So I don't know if this was first or second, but it's definitely in the top two. It is part of the California cohort, so to speak. But that's where that came from, Triumvirate. And if you want the papers that these are based off of, we looked at some of the mainstream media headlines just to see what they were saying about it. But the data, the numbers that we are going through tonight, and we got some other studies that we're going to go through tonight. The numbers that we are giving you are from. We went to the actual published sources. We went to the primary source. We didn't look at what the media was saying. We looked at what the actual scientists had written and put online for everyone to read. So that's where these came from. If you would like those sources, those links, let me know. DM me. I'll hit you up for that.
Yes.
So basically, if you believe these numbers, then you have to believe that all of New York had already been infected, and that we should see a complete shutdown of all deaths in New York City. If there is a death, a single death in New York City tomorrow, then the reality, the real numbers do not line up with the model that Santa Clara County is proposing.
even if it was a death 2 weeks from now, if you want to be the most like they just got infected yesterday type thing, right? Even then, you'll be probably still seeing deaths at the rate they're dropping. You're still going to see lots of coronavirus deaths 2 weeks from now.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you log in on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday next week and you're seeing deaths in New York City, in theory, if the Santa Clara County study is correct, then next week there should be 0 deaths in New York City. You should see New York City doing their ticker tape parade, their celebration. There was 0 deaths in New York City that day because of coronavirus. Their daily death rate should fall back to about 100, which is what the CDC average was for 2019 and 2018 for New York City. We should see all that fall back next week. I promise you, we will not see that. There's no indication that we're going to see that. And that's what, again, these studies are nice. We wish they were true, but when you try to apply these numbers to the reality of New York City, to the reality of international countries, they do not line up. They don't even come close to lining up. Go ahead, Dyer.
All right. So international studies. Let's pull up just the Korean one first, but I just want to say that there's been studies from Korea that was the best representative study I've seen so far. Also, Wuhan, if you wanted to believe that or not, Castiglione, I don't know how to say that place, Castiglione, Galette, and the Netherlands. These are all different studies with slightly different methodologies and sample sizes, but the thing they all have in common is they disagree with the local studies, the one done in Santa Clara, and they also had far better sample sizes. So the one in South Korea. So South Korea was doing drive-in testing and just mass testing of people who weren't sick, so that they could go into work. They were testing everybody. It was completely random. It was in such a large numbers that it was a very good representative of their entire country, because they have a much lower population than us, and they tested 589,520 people.
They also started doing that weeks before we did. The reason why that was weeks is because, as we've talked about multiple times on this show, the CDC really brutally botched the testing process in America because they wanted a complicated test. It did not work. And the CDC specifically, CDC Director Redford, I believe. Yeah, Redford, CDC Director. The CDC is absolutely, conclusively, without a doubt, we are saying this absolutely definitively, the CDC is why America, the United States of America, was 5 weeks late on testing as compared to South Korea. Because the test that South Korea was using, the CDC rejected it for no reason other than they wanted a more complicated test that could test for other things, like, I think it was MERS and SARS. MERS and SARS are coronaviruses, but they are not the coronavirus that was spreading at the time, and they were idiotically, for no reason, requesting a more complicated test. There's a whole lot of, I think we'll talk about it on Saturday too. Also, in addition to sending out test kits that did not work for 5 weeks, some of the test kits that the CDC sent out also were infected themselves with coronavirus.
Oh my God!
Did you not hear that?
I did not hear that. What the fuck?
Yeah, so there was, in addition to them sending out contaminated, the contaminated as in the chemicals that detect coronavirus were contaminated and couldn't detect coronavirus because they were contaminated. Some of the test kits were also contaminated with actual coronavirus and may, probably not, but possibly could have infected people just from unsealing the test kit. It's highly unlikely just because when you're opening a test kit, you're already in a sterile environment. So you're probably, even if there is something on it, you're probably not going to pick it up. But the fact remains, we will cover that on Saturday, I promise you. But the reason why South Korea has a much better testing regime than we do is because the CDC massively fucked that up.
Yeah.
So any data, as Dyer is going through right now, data coming out of South Korea is better data than America's data. Maybe it's not more representative of American data. The South Korean population is much different than American populations, but their data is more reliable as opposed to the American data, which has a accuracy range of 0 to 0% accurate.
So this study also came out, the numbers you're looking at now, way earlier. I believe it was in February. So they had been testing, and they came up with a study with these numbers. They tested this many people that early, and they tested many more since then. But basically, they had out of the 589,520 that were tested, the vast majority were negative. Only 10,708 were positive cases, and of them, 240 were deaths. This presented a much higher death rate than what is being shown in the Santa Clara study. It was the 2 to 3% was their error, their margin of error, 2 to 3%. So that is also very much what the other 5 studies, international studies, they were all with around that range, but what they all had in common was they were way higher than what the Santa Clara study said, between 0.05 and 0.15. So, and the other 2 studies in the U.S., the domestic studies, they're all outliers compared to the international studies that were done.
Again, we wish that they were that low, and we would love. Dyer and I don't think we've made it any secret on this show that Dyer and I are very America first, America supremacy in all things technological and medical. America is the best military. We are the best at all the things. And we would love to report to you that America's death rate in COVID-19, in the China virus, is an entire factor of 10 less than every other country. We would love to report to you that America is 100 times better than Europe. If that was true, we would be reporting on it. I guarantee you, we would be screaming that we are 100 times better than Italy is.
I even have an inherent bias to think that it is true because I think that some nations have less healthy people and less healthy medical systems. So I think that it makes sense for there to be a lower death rate in the U.S. than some of the other countries. So I would expect that, but I got to look at the data being presented, and the data being presented doesn't show that. At least what it's showing us is the numbers that they're providing are unreliable. Not that our death rate isn't lower, it's that they're not showing it because their methodology and their data are flawed. Look at it. We got a test sample from Santa Clara of 3,300, whereas South Korea had a test sample of 500,000 plus.
Yeah. So, and that's exactly the right way to put it. As our bias would be, and as I said before, there's a lot of people. It's hard to put them on the political compass, but people that are anti-leftist. So you got your conservatives, your intellectual dark web, your libertarians, your anti-SJWs. That covers a really, really broad swath of the political compass. That's not just right of center. That's a lot of people. That's basically right of communism, basically. A lot of them are running with this study and other domestic American studies that agree with this And I'm telling you, if it was true, if it was true that America was doing 10 times, 100 times better than Europe is, we would be screaming that.
If that is true, we won't know because the studies we're doing are only as good as the data that they are provided, and they have bad data, and they don't even have access to good data because we did bad testing. Not enough testing. The test kits they're using are so flawed that they produce useless data. Even the person who's wondering, am I infected? They don't know because these test kits are worthless.
Yes. So, I wish that these studies were true. The data from the actual study, not from the mainstream media, not from the analysis, from looking at the actual study, it doesn't say this thing. It doesn't say what this says. It does not say what the mainstream media is saying it says. If you try to compare what even... So, one, it's not saying what the mainstream media is trying to blow it way... They're trying to magnify the benefits way out of proportion. You guys can guess what reason that is for. Even within the study, though, the actual numbers within the study, they do not match the reality of New York. Now, there's a lot of differences within the United States as compared to abroad, especially South Korea. New York City is probably where we have the best data from. So if New York City is blowing way outside the range of what the Santa Clara study is saying, is suggesting that the United States population is suffering from, it doesn't match up. I mean, these studies are cute and all, but if they don't match with the actual data that we have, the reality that is on the ground, then you got to throw them out, or you have to explain. These studies have to explain what the problem is. And the problem is, especially with the mainstream media, this analysis of extrapolating the Santa Clara study to New York, I promise you guys can take me to the bank on this. This is Fox.
In a bank.
Direwolf Media, this is the only place you are going to see extrapolating the results from the Santa Clara study onto the reality of New York. This is the only place that you are going to see what is up on the screen right now, where if you take the mortality rate and try to figure out how many are infected in New York, this is the only place that has done the math and seen that you are likely to have gone over the entire population of New York, that your assumption must be that nearly the entire population of New York, or a lot more than is the entire population of New York, has been infected. I did this math on Monday or Tuesday, I think, Dyer. You can correct me on that. I was blown away. I was like, wow, that Santa Clara study is really interesting. I wonder if that's true. Does that line up with the New York study? Not even the New York study, but just the New York death rate.
I remember you asking, so what is the population of New York City anyways?
Yeah. So if any of the mainstream media outlets, if any of the other conservative commentary, if any of the other libertarian commentary had run the numbers and tried to extrapolate this out, they would have seen that this doesn't line up with New York City actual population. Even on the low end, on the lowest end, you have to assume that 92% of New York's population has already been infected, and that most of them, like 90% of that, has not seen any symptoms. It's a really simple calculation, guys. It's a really, really simple calculation. And that, me just looking at that was what brought this entire episode, this entire segment. We've got other studies to show, but this particular study, this particular segment, this particular calculation, I shall pull it up here. This particular calculation, if you try to extrapolate the Santa Clara study to New York, it does not line up. And I will say it again, there was 2 other studies. There was a New York City study, and there was a LA County study that also suggested similar mortality rates to the Santa Clara study. Well, we didn't have time to go through those, but I think we have adequately debunked the Santa Clara study. We've shown that they selected from a population that was of much higher risk of being infected, and their final result doesn't match with reality. Now, do these 2 other studies, are they true? I really don't know. That's something you guys are gonna have to go through on your own. Those 3 studies all had hundreds of scientists each. They've all been analyzed by multi-billion-dollar several media agencies each. We only had Dyer and I, 2 people who do this as a hobby for, well, I guess $200 tonight. A little bit of money every week. We only had time to go through 1 study, but I think we've thoroughly debunked that 1 study. And any study that agrees with this study, I think it needs to come under pretty heavy scrutiny.
Degrees or disagrees?
Agrees.
Okay, so we're going to the next study?
Yes.
Oh, wait, Trump has said something in chat, actually. He said that it'd be more fair to compare a New York study to New York because Santa Clara is very heavily suburban.
So one of the because we delayed this one day, Triumvirate, because I fucked up. So one of the problems, again, the reason why I fucked up was when I was trying to get the specific numbers for this, I mixed up the Santa Clara and LA County studies, which was a really big deal when I was getting different numbers from both studies, and that really messed up my calculations. The New York study, that actually came out late yesterday, early this morning, and so if we had done this yesterday, the New York City study would not have been even a part of this. So we've especially not had time to go through the New York City study, though I absolutely agree with you. The New York City study would be a much better representation for New York City, but I still think the New York City raw data not agreeing with the Santa Clara conclusions still is pretty good debunking of
it was
Santa
worth
Clara.
bringing it up because they were trying to use the Santa Clara study, which only had 3,300 people, to extrapolate to the entire country.
Yes, that's the thing. The Santa Clara study, I bet you it could be right for Santa Clara. I don't think it's right for the whole country. That's a big difference. That's a really big difference.
Well, you say you bet it could be accurate for Santa Clara, but we don't really know if it's accurate to anything because it's done none of accurate data. It's 3,300 is not enough of a sample size for even Santa Clara, to be honest with you.
All of this is true. Dyer, would you like to read our next study? Because we have another study. So this was on the infection rate studies. So again, there were 3 different infection rate studies. We only went through one of them. We just explained why we only had time to go through one of them. You guys are plenty capable of going through other ones. We're going to go through a different study that also is about the coronavirus and is also a pretty big fucking deal. Dyer, why don't you read that beginning for us?
All right. So the is that Virginia? Virginia chloroquine?
No. That is
VA.
That is a Veterans
VA.
Association.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I'm drunk. So the VA chloroquine lethality study.
That is
Go
VA,
from me, you soy
as
boy
in
beta cock. The
veterans.
transaction is complete.
Woo!
A mask for the troops. It is
Triumvirate.
not just anti-leftists who got this wrong. The left-wing media got it wrong too because they did not look into the studies either.
Mm-hmm.
They just ignored the studies outright, which probably encouraged the anti-elft.
Yes, I absolutely agree.
Agreed.
Yeah. Triumvirate, like, give us $10 for a mask. Thank very much, Jam.
Thank you.
Much appreciation. Yeah, basically, I said left-wing media got it wrong. They didn't look into the studies. They just ignored the studies because they just wanted to, well, we're at the end of this, we're going to go through why we think the studies were so biased. I think there's probably a political reason for that.
Guess what it might be.
It could possibly be that. But yeah, the left wanted to see what they wanted to see out of it. The right wanted to see what they wanted to see out of it. One of the things I find fascinating is I'm going to say Crowder because he's what I've watched the most. But I've seen this in other people, other right of center groups. Crowder did a back-to-back segment, even today, I think it was today or yesterday, back-to-back segment looking at this, the Santa Clara study, suggesting that the mortality rate was far lower than as originally reported. And then the next segment, the immediately next segment, was talking about how the mainstream media was trying to say that Trump told everyone to inject Clorox into their veins, which was obviously fake news, which we'll go through more on Saturday. But basically, you've got a lot of these supposed, I don't know, I guess independent commentators that are saying, oh, look at the mainstream media. They're all saying this report that it's not as bad as everyone said. And then immediately after that saying, oh, look at the mainstream media. They're reporting this extremely fake news about the exact same topic, coronavirus, as we just said was true. It just doesn't make sense. I don't understand how Crowder, how Daily Wire, how Tim Pool, how Stexenhammer can report on the Santa Clara study as they all have. They've all reported the Santa Clara study as this is true. We need to reopen the country because it's true, and no one's getting in bad symptoms from it. Everyone's already been infected. It's not a big deal. And then they're also doing videos immediately after that saying the mainstream media is lying about key coronavirus treatments. It just doesn't line up. Like, it's got to be one or the other. And it is our opinion that the media is lying in both cases. I don't know why the right and the independents and the left of centers and the anti-SJWs are all doing this kind of juggling game where they're believing some of it and not believing other parts of it. We tend to unbelieve all of it, distrust and verify. And if anybody wants the links to the original studies, we've got those. Hit us up, DM us, Twitter us. I think we really did our homework on this, and I think we did our homework on it in a way that if we'd been paid $100,000 a year for some sort of journalism position at some big media outlet, we just wouldn't have done. I don't know. It's a really sad state of affairs. I don't like it. Dyer, continue. I'm just going to keep more and more pessimistic.
All right. So the VA, I don't like the VA very much. They're there to take care of me, but they just seem by their actions more like they're trying to kill me. Anyways, the VA chloroquine lethality study. So here are the sensational headlines around this study.
Sensational.
So first one is from the AP. More deaths, no benefit from malaria drug in VA virus study.
That's very sensational.
No benefit to it at all? I mean, after all the studies that show that it was actually helping people recover quicker, and it
isn't
makes
the
people
AP
die?
like the supposed to be like the default, like bare bones, no editorialization, like AP, the Associated Press, is supposed to be like the defaultest basic facts?
Yeah, I guess so.
Isn't no benefit pretty declarative? Isn't that like pretty definitive?
It sounds like an opinion as well, yeah?
Well, I mean, it's an opinion only if the studies don't say that.
Right.
So that implies that the studies say that. Spoiler alert, the studies don't say that.
That's why I said opinion, yes. Also, from Newsweek, is all in caps, by the way. Coronavirus drug chloroquine should not be used for COVID-19 because lethality is primary outcome. What the fuck? Study shows. I highly doubt the study shows that. I think it's just something that people in media learn this. Just because you say a study shows something, it doesn't just immediately make the statement you made before it true.
I'm pretty sure if you based off what Newsweek said, and kind of supported by AP, if you even say the word chloroquine or think it, if you think the word
gulag for you.
Yes, you will die. If you even have thought the word chloroquine, you will die. That is what this is saying.
Jeez Louise, it's like Voldemort. Don't even say it.
Yeah.
It's that dangerous. Its primary outcome is death. So all people who have malaria and they get treated with it, I guess they're all dying too, right?
Yes.
Oh, they're not? In fact, it's been a drug that's been used for a very long time, very successfully, and it doesn't have a high death rate or a death rate that. Oh, okay. So why is it now deadly? Only when it applies to coronavirus.
Okay.
Study?
So, just to quickly recap, the VA, the Veterans Association Hospital, so veterans. As we know. Dyer's going to talk more about that later. Yeah, people who were in the military. Dyer will talk more about them later, but we just want to clarify, VA is veterans. So the AP said no benefit, and Newsweek said lethality is primary outcome. Wow, that's pretty crazy. What did the study actually say? So AP and Newsweek were referencing a study, a actual report by scientists. What did the scientists actually say in their study? Well, the quote in the study, it said, quote, investigators found no evidence that use of hydrochloroquine with or without azithromycin reduced the risk of medical ventilation. Further, there was an association with increased mortality identified with patients treated with hydroxychloroquine alone. Those treated with chloroquine were nearly 3 times as likely to die as those that were not.
Is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Slowpoke has said, for $2, they say you die from it, and yet I saw bitch boy celebrities about the side effects of the drug while eventually getting better. Yes, yes, he saw bitch boy celebrities taking chloroquine and being fine. Yes, we've all seen that. And he's also said, this is Slowpoke, I'm getting mad over here, Dyer. So can I hate fuck your ass so hard you'll be a gaping, leaking mess? Slowpoke, we know that you're into the bottom in this situation. So, continuing on, thank you for the $2. Basically, again, I want to reiterate, not that we're unhappy about your interruption, Slowpoke, but I do want to continue this unbroken. Thank you for the $2.
I also like to continue unbroken. Just throw it out there.
Dyer can be broken for $100 or more.
No!
AP and Newsweek basically said, you're gonna die if you take chloroquine. The study, again, Dyer and I, we didn't just look at the news media, what they said about it. We went and looked at the actual journal articles that were published directly by what the scientists themselves typed out.
Is money.
Slowpoke has thus interrupted me again.
Growth.
And I much appreciate his $2. He says, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of economic growth. How dare you? Which he has used $2 to say the exact same thing that Greta already says when you send us $2. Thank you, Slowpoke. How dare you? So the media says hydrochloroquine, go kill you. The study that we actually read, what the scientists themselves typed out, not what the media said. What did the scientists who did the study, what did they actually click on their keyboards about? They said, quote, the investigators found no evidence. Sorry. The investigators found no evidence that use of hydrochloroquine, with or without azithromycin, reduced the risk of medical ventilation. Further, there was an association with increased mortality in patients treated with hydrochloroquine alone. That's pretty bold statement. So that was a quote.
Yep.
So looking at their numbers from within the study, the numbers that they actually published out to, what their numbers showed was that those treated with hydrochloroquine, were nearly 3 times as likely to die than those that were not treated with hydrochloroquine. What it showed was that if you were not treated with hydrochloroquine, you had about an 11% death rate. If you were treated with hydrochloroquine, you had a 27.8% death rate. That's almost 3 times. That's a lot. That's a lot of problems. That's a lot of death, actually. Dyer, what's a problem number one here?
Before I get to problem number one, I just want to point out something. There's been a lot of talk about the side effects of hydroxychloroquine, right? I just want to go over what the Lupus Association, which I don't know if you guys know this, but hydroxychloroquine is one of the treatments for that. The side effects on this medical website talk about the drug facts and all the dosages and how it's supposed to be administered and all that. It says the side effects are it causes nausea, vomiting, upset stomach, cramps, and diarrhea that usually occur for only a few days and go away, and sometimes, in more rare conditions, result in a temporary loss of appetite, tiredness, weakness, and headache. That is the side effects. That's way better than death.
That sounds like the side effects of chemo for cancer, but I will digress from that.
Yeah.
Go ahead and read problem number one.
Benefits, side effects, and dosing.
I'll read problem number the beginning and problem number 2, and I'll let you read the rest of the stuff that you highlighted. Okay. But you read problem number 1, and I'll switch off from you.
So problem number 1 is a non-randomized, non-controlled study. This is what is called a retrospective study, which means it is an after-the-fact review of healthcare data that already exist. These types of studies have their place, but they have limitations. One such limitation is that they have zero relevance to drug effectiveness and safety studies. Only randomized controlled studies have any usefulness when determining if a drug does or does not work.
Yes, that's very important. So this is talking about hydrochloroquine as a specific drug, whether or not it does or does not work. And the type of study, a retrospective study, has zero ability to determine if or if not hydrochloroquine is a good or good not drug, because only randomized controlled studies could do that. And they specifically did not do a randomized controlled study. Why they even published this is beyond everyone who has any idea what the word science means. Problem number 2. The data that they reviewed was only from VA hospitals. Again, Veterans Associations hospitals. Veterans, members of our illustrious military, which we bow down to and give great honors to. We must thank them for their service and gratefully give our tax dollars to support their healthcare needs. However, veterans are a highly not representative group of the average U.S. population, especially in terms of healthcare. Dyer, why are veterans not representative of the average U.S. population?
There's a lot of reasons, actually. I'm glad you asked. But before we get to how we're different, I also want to go into who goes to the VA is also a very selected group. Of those who are actually veterans, if they're in a lower income bracket and they can't afford better health care, the VA is the downgrade, is the lesser option, is people who are tend to have less means and are less healthy that go to the VA because they need long-term free treatment because they can't afford good treatment.
In itself is an absolute travesty. It is awful. It is a human rights violation that America enjoys such rights at the detriment of those that require the VA. The VA should be a superior hospital experience, but as Dyer knows, it is not. So that aside, it should be a superior medical experience. It is not. It is severely subpar, and that is in itself a travesty, but that does not change the meaning of the study. That people who are going into the VA are of much less ability than those going into the regular healthcare system.
Right. So, again, how are our vets different from the general population? Well, generally, they have high rates of physical injury. Joint injuries is very common. Coming out of the military, because if you're in the infantry, you're often carrying around a 70 to 80 pound pack. You're carrying around a lot of gear. You're doing a very physical job. A lot of people leave the military with very severe joint and back injuries. And because of that, there's a very high level of obesity from the inability to be mobile after retiring and suffering from it. A lot of people get retired because of their injuries. My father, he got medically retired, which is very common, because he had knee replacements and 4 surgeries on his knees. And after the 4th surgery, they're like, sorry, sir, we just can't fix you anymore. You can't do your job anymore, so you're retired. You're out. Yeah. That's a very common way to get kicked out. A lot of people in the military, they want to stay in, but they're just too broken. And then when you get out, I mean, it's hard to stay fit when you don't have the requirement for your job and you're also so broken. So obesity is one of the comorbidities for coronavirus. Also, just the stress on your body having to deal with many injuries is one thing that can make it so you're less likely to be someone who can be healthy enough to deal with the virus. Another thing is that the VA has, on another study from the VA, determined that 41% of the vets that seek their treatment there are diagnosed with mental health or behavioral disorders. Many of those disorders cause unhealthy and self-destructive behaviors such as substance abuse, and very poor diet. A lot of them are also homeless or fighting in and out of homelessness.
I'd love to do. I think we both would love to do. Like maybe we will someday. Probably soon. Maybe after I say this. There's a lot of problems with how we treat our vets. A lot of problems with the VA. A lot of stuff that would be very, very, very easy fixes if anyone in Congress gave any fucks at all. Unfortunately, we don't have that. But that just doesn't change the fact. It killed me going through this data because I know a lot of this stuff, and I'm looking through this data, and they're trying to use this VA study as a representative sample size of America and try and say, well, chloroquine is dangerous to everybody because it's dangerous to vets. We're going to go through why the study is wrong in the first place, but it just killed me that they were trying to say that veterans in the VA were representative of the American population, because I just know that that's not true. I know for an absolute fact that I have much, much better health care than anyone going through the VA is, and that is fucking wrong. I don't think that's correct. I got a lot of stuff that my tax dollars are used for that I don't agree with. I think that my constitutional right that the federal government will protect our national sovereignty, that is what the VA takes care of the aftermath of. I think that my tax dollars should go more to that. So maybe we'll do a few weeks from now we'll do something on the VA in general, but it's a travesty that the VA health outcomes are so terrible, but well, for the purpose of this conversation, what we're trying to highlight is that people in the VA, veterans in the VA system, the health outcomes of the VA system are severely subpar as compared to the average U.S. population. So this study, again, trying to go back to the beginning here, this study is looking at VA populations, and it's saying that chloroquine is lethal. And it's only looking at VA populations.
People who are in a worse situation and far less healthy and also have less means than the normal population. Also, I want to point out one other thing that is different between vets and the general population is they, on a very high ratio, their jobs require exposure to chemicals, radiation, and other hazards that have long-lasting effects. I don't want to get into it, but I have been exposed to both radiation and chemicals, and will have some long-lasting effects to it.
Yeah, it was really hard on me going through this because the media wasn't trying to provide any context for this. Unfortunately, the study was vague on the context of that, and the mainstream media had no attempt to provide the context for that. But I knew the context going through the study, going through what the mainstream media was saying about this VA study. Again, this was a study specifically on the VA hospitals, specifically on veterans. And it was hard to go through it and realize what I know about the differences between your VA averages and your population averages. And it was, well, I know that these guys have made a lot more sacrifices than the average U.S. population has. And I think it's absolutely awful that this is affecting them harder. Certainly the study, if this study is worth anything, it says that if you have been in the military, this is a much higher risk to you than the general population. That's awful. That's absolutely awful. I hate that. I don't like that study at all. I don't like the results at all. I don't disagree with them, but I don't like them.
We're expendable to them, that's all.
Yeah, but to try and extrapolate for the mainstream media, for the AP, for Newsweek, for I think CNN and Fox had even tried to do this. I know Crowder did. I'm pretty sure Stex did too as well. They've referenced these studies. They've referenced this specific VA study. And for them to try to extrapolate that people who are under the VA healthcare circuit, that they are representative of the average American population, that's offensive to military people. It should be. They probably won't be, but I feel offense on their behalf. It's not true. It's not accurate. And it's pretty a wild speculation to assume that your average American has experienced the exact same healthcare stability that a veteran has experienced. It's just not true.
Our problem with this study compared to the previous study is actually not the conclusion, because I believe that in this case, the study really does show that vets do have a higher rate of dying.
Specifically vets.
When getting the virus, even with treatment. That's what it shows.
That's sad. That's awful. I'm not happy about that.
If you get the virus and you're given the best treatment, a treatment that, by the way, has the side effects of nausea and diarrhea and maybe headaches, that even with that treatment, they have a drastically higher rate of dying in VA hospitals with VA doctors with the long wait times and the poor quality of treatment, and because of the general health of those vets. I'm sure that the conclusion that you can get from this data from this study is accurate. But what is not accurate is you cannot extrapolate that data with that sample size to the rest of the United States, because it's not representative in any possible way.
Absolutely, and that's the problem, is that that's the problem that we're going with. And so, like, even the Santa Clara study, if the Santa Clara study had said we are limiting our result set to Santa Clara County, that's fine. I would say, yeah, there's some problems with it. I think it's probably mostly correct. I would even say I agree that a lot of people in Santa Clara County have been affected. I don't think it's as many as what the study said because there's some problems in the study, but I definitely don't think that the Santa Clara study is representative of the American population. Just as I absolutely refuse to believe that the VA study that veterans are a representative sample of the U.S. population.
We're getting there, Triumvirate. We just got stuck on this first.
Triumvirate. I think I know where you're going with this, and there's a lot of spots. There's so many spots where this is wrong at, and we only have time to go through a few of them.
Well, you covered that one, didn't you?
Which one was it?
The fact that they were giving to people who are only the most ill.
We're gonna get to that next.
Okay, cool. Then we are on the ball. In your face, Fox.
Yes. Do you want to highlight the spot where you think we are?
Yeah, problem 3. You're already there. Just read. I see your cursor.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that's where I'm looking at. I've got 4 really big monitors. Like the probability.
So impressive, Fox.
Yeah, the probability that I'm looking at the 4 pixels that represent the cursor.
Everyone bow down to Fox with his 4 gigantic
phallic-shaped monitors. I'm not asking for a bow down. I'm asking for you guys to shame Dyer for his inadequate monitors.
Hey. I'm okay. I'm comfortable with my 3. All right, 2 that I'm using. Where's that plugged in?
I only have 4. It's okay.
Hey, you know what? See, I can do more with less by hiring someone else to do all this stuff.
That's me. Okay, so problem number 3. What is problem number 3? So, one of the problems with this study, this was a 27-page study about VA, the veterans. Hold on 1 second here.
Sorry, I should not have yawned on mic.
The lights in my streaming room are on a timer for 6 hours, and they just turned off. So I had to return all of them on. Otherwise,
is that to remind you not to have a 6-hour stream?
No, it's to save power. Because I'm a environmentalist fag. Anyways, so
fag.
Yes. I'm sure you guys are enjoying the stream by now. Anybody who's watching this long is like a hardcore viewer, so like you're not gonna care if I like fuck up or not. All right. Problem number 3 with the VA study is how often, when did they give chloroquine? How much chloroquine did they give?
How often?
What was the frequency of chloroquine? When did they give it?
Important data points.
It would be really important data points, especially if you're going to try to decide whether or not chloroquine was safe or not. You would be disappointed if you read this study as I did. I read this 27-page study, and it did not one time say that there was no specific level, like milligrams or nanograms or hypergrams or whatever grams. There was no reporting of how much chloroquine did they give these vets. I feel like I'm lying to you just saying that because it's so absurd. I'm gonna say it again in a slightly different way. There was a 27-page, what is it was called? A 27-page retrospective study on VA veterans that showed that they had a 3 times higher death rate had they used hydrochloroquine over those that had not used hydrochloroquine. And, as I said previously, to reiterating all this stuff, this study did not track how much chloroquine they had. I cannot even begin to, Triumvirate, I feel like I know for a fact you're adequate in understanding what I'm saying here. I don't even know how to explain it to people that are not versed in scientific
Let me
studies.
try.
Dyer, please try.
Okay. The basic component of trying to do a study on any kind of medication is to completely document and control all of the basic data around how often and how much is given. Because that is very important for calculating the effects of that thing. If you don't know how much of it or how often, in what time frame, then you've learned nothing about that drug, because anything in too much or too often can be deadly, and anything too little and too infrequent can be ineffective. Right? So just so you know, hydroxychloroquine is supposed to be issued in 6.5 milligrams or less. There's not even an exact prescribed amount because it's different based on what you're trying to treat. But it's 6.5 milligrams or less per kilogram of body weight, which is for a 150-pound person, that's about 443 milligrams a day, or 2 pills, because each pill is 20 milligrams standard. 200 milligrams standard. So we don't know how much they were given. They could have been given an incorrect amount.
It's really fucking frustrating. I mean, Dyer, how many times did I text you about this? I
think you may have blown at least one aneurysm.
It was really, really hard. I'm even thinking through it right now.
So
it's really fucking infuriating.
So the point of this makes a study you can't actually replicate the study, right? Because for you to do a good scientific study of anything, if you don't have enough data to redo the study, then it can't be fact checked, it can't be peer reviewed, it's useless. The study is actually not usable.
So I just don't even know what to compare it to, because it's so no, it's absolutely, it's it's a fucking useless study.
Toilet paper that's been used.
Yeah, it's a fucking useless study. I mean, I just don't know. I know Shadow Wolf. I know Triumvirate. I've talked to you guys. I know what you guys do for a living. I know you guys know what the studies and stuff like that mean. I just cannot. And even talking to Dyer, offline, when we've talked about this, it's hard thinking back through it. The level at which these conclusions stated by the article, the level at which those conclusions do not even come close. Not even a tiniest bit come close.
Thank you, Tetris Frig.
To being representative of the data presented by those studies. So the studies, when you produce a journal article, when you produce a scientific article, something you want to publish, you produce data, you produce a conclusion, and preferably in that conclusion you include the context of why you drew that conclusion. A lot of people have forgotten that in the last couple of decades. Sad. It's a reversion of science. I much disdain it. But in these specific articles, I still consider myself a a scientist of the classical manner. You're looking at data that doesn't even come close to purporting the conclusions stated in the journal. And then you've got media articles. They're taking those unsubstantiated conclusions and extrapolating them into like the highest order, the most extreme version of them. Absolutely. Everyone in America has been infected by coronavirus. It's really frustrating. Just thinking about it hurts my heart. I absurdly pissed about it. I cannot believe that the media... Well, I cannot believe that someone would take a VA study out of this order. And we haven't even gotten to the punchline yet. Wait for the punchline.
Yeah, it's worse.
It gets way worse. The VA study is already severely biased. There's a punchline that makes it even worse biased. But the fact that this study did not, in the conclusion, admit this bias, and then the media ran with this extreme bias and tried to say that the whole population, there's been a whole bunch of people already infected. It's just not true. It's absolutely not true. And it's infuriating. It's infuriating to anyone who's read this study. I really, 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 really hope we've conveyed that adequately to the layman.
We need to do the next point.
Dyer, do the next point. I'm just lost my mind. I've absolutely lost it.
Oh, no. I completely agree with you. This study does not claim even with any real data, because it doesn't provide data. It doesn't actually claim what the media is trying to say it did. And then even the claims that are made in the article, in the study, are not actually backed up by data in the study, which makes it completely worthless. And I think we shouldn't be calling it a study because it wasn't actually formulated like a study, right?
Yes.
So that's the problem. We're calling it something it's not. It wasn't a study. It is a blog post, 27 pages long. So problem number 4 with this blog post was who exactly was getting this chloroquine, hydroxychloroquine. That's an important question. I mean, we know it's veterans, but who in that that category of veterans was being issued the drug? The date range of the study was from March 9th to April 11th. The FDA did not authorize chloroquine as a treatment measure until April 7th. Before this, doctors were still allowed to prescribe, but there was no unified national opinion on it either way, except for the media was saying it was a death drug, and that Trump was trying to kill people by touting a drug that's been used to treat people for a very long time. So for 28 of the 32 days the study went for, anyone receiving hydroxychloroquine was, I figured it out, was purely at the discretion of the individual doctor. According to the paper, quote, hydroxychloroquine with or without Visimarfin. Oh my God, I said that wrong. Anyways, it's an antibiotic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So hydroxychloroquine, along with with or without an antibiotic, was more likely to be prescribed to patients with more severe forms of the disease. This was probably at least a last-ditch attempt to save someone already dying, and not something given to those who were having milder symptoms or symptoms they thought they would recover from. So basically, this study says that those who were in the process of dying already were more likely to die than other people who were in the process of dying. That doesn't make sense. He's saying that if you take a control group of people who already are dying from the worst form of coronavirus, if you give them the drug, that a high rate of them died anyways.
Yeah, basically, if you were already dying from China virus, you were more likely to die than people who were not dying from the coronavirus.
Obviously.
Science!
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 I can't talk about the most biased.
I want to reiterate that again. I want to reiterate that over and over and over again. I think that's an important part. I want everybody to understand that. This study, this is a quote, a direct quote from what was published by the scientists who, not the media sensationalization. Direct quote. Hydrochloroquine, with or without azithromycin, that's an antibiotic, was more likely to be prescribed to patients with more severe disease. Hydrochloroquine was more likely to be prescribed to patients with more severe disease. Hydrochloroquine was more likely to be prescribed to people with more severe disease.
We get it. The study is completely flawed from the very first to very last word.
So the study supposedly concludes that people prescribed hydrochloroquine were more likely to die, when really all the study shows is that people that were more likely to die from coronavirus, that they were more likely to die from coronavirus.
Actually, what the study kind of shows is with the worst case scenario, or with a group that is at risk of dying from coronavirus, of those people at risk of dying who actually are dying, still the drug saved 1/3 of them.
Yes.
This is absurd. This is so stupid. I'm not sure who I'm more upset with. Is it the people who made this blog post, or the people who took this blog post and called it a study?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely absurd. One, it was absurd for this to be published in the first place. So I'm about to get into this. This is a not peer-reviewed study. This was not peer-reviewed study.
Because it doesn't meet the basic requirements of a study that would need to be peer-reviewed in the first place.
Absolutely.
Because science!
Because science! But that does not stop the media or even your independent YouTuber, blogger type media other than us. People that are in the category that we consider ourselves to be a part of. They are still reporting this as though it is true, and we are highly, highly upset and dismayed at that. It is extremely frustrating. We love you guys as an audience. We absolutely do, and it is.
We're honored.
We are honored. I will say though, it is. It's not that we deserve more or less. It is painful though to see people with factors of 10, multiple magnitudes, 10, 100, 1,000 times our audience size, looking at these studies, people who have thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions more dollars, and doing this full time as compared to Dyer and I. It is very, very frustrating and nauseating. I know for me, I don't know about that. I know I am.
No, I completely agree.
I'm nauseated that those groups of people that have those resources at their disposal are looking at these studies and thinking them factual and not looking at them in the way that we are looking at them. It's not nauseating because I'm upset about it. It's nauseating because I'm terrified. I am terrified that these people that I consider thought leaders, that I enjoy their content. The problem is that I know millions of other people also enjoy their content and think them correct as thought leaders on a regular basis. And I'm thinking, well, shit, what the fuck does the world look like when I have the majority of the population thinks obviously the wrong thing because the thought leaders leading them are also missing these very basic math problems or very basic study problems.
It's very scary.
I'm nauseated by it. It's from fear. Absolutely, Diary. It's scary. It's from fear. I'm so scared. I'm nauseated from it.
I feel like we're always fighting this battle of misinformation, right? Or fighting the lies with what we believe to be true, right? But it feels like people on our own side are throwing grenades into our own tents. They're fighting against us. They're also doing two things. They're spreading false information, with or without knowing. They might just be lazy, right? Because they're seeing something that it reinforces their bias or reinforces what they want to be true, and they're not being critical. But when they're critical of other things, they're not critical of this thing because it supports their opinion. But at the same time, they're not teaching their audiences to be critical thinkers. And that's a problem. We have a huge deficit of people who are critical thinkers or have those rhetorical skills or the ability to think for themselves. The best thing we can do for you, our audience, is not just give you our opinions, but show you how we got there, and so you guys can see through our thought process, so you can do the same. You can double check us, and honestly, I'm humbled by our audience. I don't know about you, Fox, and I'm humbled by you too. The people who follow us, we have some really intelligent people. Who, by the way, I'm just a fucking soldier, man. I don't have any special experience in a lot of things we talk about, and a lot of things I study. It's all just a hobby for me, or I'm just trying to understand what's going on in the world better. But some of the people that follow us are legitimately very intelligent people, and you too, Fox. You followed and also are on the team, and you're a very intelligent guy. And I'm humbled by the fact that you guys come to me and Fox for opinions, but I'm just surprised that the two of us, with our limited means, can do the groundwork and the critical thinking to come to to find out that this study that people on both sides have been citing as being factual, we can see that it's flawed from the ground up. But these people with gigantic audiences and influence, they just didn't want to, or they were too lazy to actually look into it, and they've now caused this massive problem that we can't fix. That's why it's nauseating. It's because it's a battle we can't win. Because we can tell the truth all we want, but we're telling 12 people, which is fine. I'll have all 12 of you, right? Probably 10 because 2 of us are watching it. I'm betting. Yes. But I very much value everyone who watches our videos and who is engaged and part of the audience, part of the community. We love you guys. The problem is that those other millions of people who are being told this information, we're not reaching them.
I know I watch a lot of stuff I don't like. I think like I would say have, but we have like enough conversations per week. Like, fucking hell, Tim Pool says some of the stupidest fucking shit.
He does.
Like,
he does.
It's that's just kind of like a little behind the scenes. I don't want to say like, oh, like this whole show is based off like what Tim Pool fucking said. No, like Tim Pool puts out like 6 hours a day worth of content, and he's also like left of center, and he is one of many people I watch that are left of center. He's also, that even also constitutes the people that I've listened to that are right of where I'm at, which I would say Crowder is pretty far right of where I'm at, even on a lot of stuff. I still love his content. Tim is really left, really fucking far left on a lot of content that I watch. That I like his opinions on probably about 60% of the time. Daily Wire, they're hit or miss on a lot of stuff. Stuck, Sex, and Hammer, hit or miss on a lot of stuff. A lot of other, so some of these, the priors for some of this, the priors for a lot of stuff that we've been looking at for coronavirus, some of the stuff that we've been ahead of, probably at least half of the stuff that we have been way ahead of the curve on. I've gotten that from Peak Prosperity. You guys watch them on YouTube. It's just, you got to look at a medley of sources. And it is my opinion that someone like a Crowder, someone like a Tim Pool, someone like a Sex, Sex, and Hammer, they don't got time to be looking at a broad range of sources. And I think that tonight, again, I don't want to just say that we're regurgitating things that other YouTubers have said. I heard ideas that other YouTubers were saying, that other content creators were saying, and we went and looked at the actual studies. Both of the stories that we went through were based on the actual reading these studies that were published directly by the scientists who published them and using their own conclusions against what the media interpretation was. I don't think that's a problem at all.
Reading the foreign studies as well.
Yeah,
they're reading over the drug facts and finding out what the drug actually does to you.
Yeah,
I did a lot of shit. We did a lot of shit for this show. This particular show.
I think this was a significantly unique compilation of all those different things, and we went through and we did our research. We cited our sources. I think we absolutely did. But you look at so last night we skipped last night. I did 2 hours of research. I accidentally conflated the Santa Clara study with the LA County study, and I mixed up the numbers and the stuff that I had said. It was still, the conclusions were true, but the numbers that I was going to report were not true. And I told Dyer, we need to skip this. I don't have time to detangle those. We need to do this the right way. He obviously he fucking agreed with me. Obviously, I don't
yeah, of course,
100%. There was no question about that. Obviously agreed. So that's why we waited a night to do it. We did it tonight. So I did 2 hours last night. I did 2 hours tonight. We went through, cited our sources, did the studies, did the math. Very simple math. I think we debunked, 5 or 6 or 7 billion-dollar conglomerate media organizations, million viewer plus YouTube channels, and we're with, we much thank you guys tonight for the generous donations. Average monthly income, maybe not quite representative of what tonight was. Much appreciate you guys. Very much thank you guys. Much appreciate that. But that is millions of dollars less than what some of these other YouTube creators and mainstream media channels are getting. We are doing that with dozens to hundreds to thousands less staff in hundreds to thousands of less hours of time working through this. I'm so disappointed. I'm so disappointed that we're the rarity in reporting these studies in the way that we are. I really do. These studies get me on a really emotional level. I'm so viscerally disappointed that people with larger audiences and more money resources than we do, people who do this full time. Dyer and I both have. Dyer has a much harder job than I do. He's doing 12, 14 hours a day. I'm doing 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day. I'm doing some hours a day. Other than this, we have other jobs. Dyer's much harder. But you've got people that are doing commentary full time. You've got media agencies that are doing media full time for millions, billions of dollars, and they're not explaining this stuff. I would challenge anybody to please respond to us. If you think that what we explained is mathematically wrong, if you want to look back at the studies and explain to us why we messed up these studies, why we fucked up looking at the data, why we couldn't multiply X times 0.15% equals New York deaths, and then extrapolate that X equals more than the entire population of New York City. If you want to do that, please contact us on that. I'm very confident that we did this correctly, and I don't think it was hard.
You know what? If we do get it wrong, and we have in the past, if we do get it wrong and you show us we're wrong, or we find out on our own, which also is more often than not we find out on our own, we tell you guys, we do a retraction, we make sure that we make it right, because we actually care about the story being right. Everyone makes mistakes, but some people, like definitely the media, they just hide it.
So yeah, but that's what I'm saying though. It's disheartening on two levels. One is disheartening on that the people with the bigger reach are doing it wrong, and I want that. I know those people are on my side. They're on my side of the fence, and my bias. You guys know we have got a bias.
Of course.
My bias is that I wish that they were correct. I want them to be correct. But that doesn't make them correct.
It does not.
Me wanting them to be correct does not make them want to correct. Does not make them correct, and it disheartens me when I realize, man, they really fucked that up. And then the second level of disheartening is that I would love for these studies to be correct. I really do. I wish the coronavirus was less lethal than the flu. I wish that 90% of the U.S. population has been affected so far, so that we know that they all were not symptomatic, and that we can all go back to work. We can undo the lockdowns, and none of this was necessary. I would love that so much, and it really kills me that, one, we have so many people on my side of the fence that are fucking this up royally, and then two, it kills me that these hopeful studies are anything but, that they are absolutely falsifiable, they're absolutely incorrect, and that this hope is false. And I wish it was true. I really wish there was hope there. I really wish the people on my side of the fence weren't fucking it up. It hurts me. It hurts me, really. I do. It does.
Did you just misuse the word falsifiable?
No.
They're not falsifiable, because you can't prove them false because their data's not accurate.
I think I used falsifiable as a double negative.
Okay.
But
fair enough.
Triumvirate. I don't trust Direwolf. Triumvirate. If you say I used it wrong, I will say I used it wrong. He's sober and can figure that out.
I am a bit sauced at the moment.
I was a bit sauced when we started.
You're just a bit saucy. Anyways, I'm not sure what... Is that the same meaning in that context? No, it doesn't.
I mean, you want to read our conclusion here?
There's a conclusion? Sure. Fuck it. So, this one...
Science!
So, this is extremely dangerous, actually. You're right. I didn't write this, but it's completely true. This is extremely dangerous.
Like the media response to this.
Yeah, how people are uncritically just publishing this and making definitive statements based on this and not critically viewing this. I'm doing air quotes here. This science. They're not actually looking at it and making sure it actually is scientific. That's dangerous because they're telling people a bunch of things are true without any evidence to back up the thing. And is anti-science to say that these studies are accurate or have any kind of real conclusion that you can, or any kind of data you can really make a conclusion off of. It's about as anti-science as being an anti-vaxxer or burning 5G towers. Burning 5G towers would be, in comparison, more scientific. This is not
Dyer's a 5G truth.
It's a comparison. Okay, it's a comparison. This is not good science. This is sensational journalism. But more than just trying to get people to make click things because they're scared or they're angry. It's lying to the general public is what it is. It is easy to see in headlines like with the New York Post article from the other day. Says driver crashes car after passing out while wearing N95 mask from CO2 buildup. That headline right there is an example of sensational journalism that throws science and reason out the window. This is clearly absurd, fake news clickbait. But it is less clear with these studies. These studies I have, and by the way, if you don't understand why a driver crashes after passing out from wearing N95 mask from CO2 buildup, if you don't understand why that's fake news, please indulge me for a second. The N95 mask is worn all the fucking time and doesn't result in people passing out. That's because when you breathe in or out through the mask, you actually are receiving air and pushing air out through the mask. You'd have to breathe. It only provides a small amount of resistance that anyone who is healthy, a normal person, even a little unhealthy, as long as they have lung capacity to move the air, they should be able to do that easily because there's only a small amount of resistance. And you need more air in a breath than is in the mask. And when you breathe out, it doesn't stay in the mask. So the conclusion that is stated in the headline that is not backed up by the article that someone passed out from CO2 because some police officer assumed maybe because he's wearing a mask, it must be because there's a correlation, it must be causation, was basically the point of the article. He was wearing a mask, he crashed his car, mask thus must have caused the crashing of the car. Unless this guy was so morbidly obese that he couldn't actually breathe already, and like sitting down in his car and pushing the gas pedal made him hyperventilate. Only in that very specific for my 400-pound life scenario could an N95 mask provide enough resistance to make it difficult enough to breathe that you might pass out. And I still don't believe it. Anyways, moving on. That's an obvious example of clickbait bullshit. But it's less clear with these studies, the ones we covered in this story. These studies,
they look like they're... the headlines look like they could be true, and that's the problem. Is like what Dyer just said, that study that he just said, the article that he just said that somebody passed out because there was CO2 buildup in their mask, like obviously fucking absurd. But the like studies that we just talked about, where it's like, you got to kind of dig into the data, you got to run the numbers, you got to do some extrapolation to different cities and all this stuff, and all that stuff's hard to do. That's hard to do. You look at this New York Post headline. Let's see here. You look at this New York Post headline. And it's fucking obvious. Like, well, there's no way you could build up that much CO2 inside an N95 mask. That's just like on his face fucking stupid. The studies, though, that are more complicated, that got like variables and like thousands of participants, they got different things going on, they're talking about science terms, that's hard to figure out. I really, really hope that I really hope that we are able to like bring that down to like everybody can understand that like those studies were also fucking as stupid as this headline is. But that's kind of the grand conclusion of this show, is that this simple headline is on its face dumb, but when the New York Post and the New York Times and ABC and NBC and CNN and Fox News and Crowder and all these other places are talking about these scientific articles, they're also getting it fucking wrong. It's just harder to tell because it's not obvious. It's not obvious unless you look at the study and you run the numbers. Really obvious from this headline that this is stupid. Less obvious if you look at a headline that says, well, chloroquine could kill you. That's not as obvious. You got to read the studies. You got to look at the AP article. You got to read the AP article. You got to hunt down, because the AP, the real shit of it, the AP article that we referenced, that did not link to the actual study. I had to independently look up the study the AP article was referring to. I had to independently try to find the unpeer-reviewed article that was published. That was not easy. That took me like 5 or 10 minutes. I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot of time, but that's a lot more time than somebody who's not trying to build a segment out of this is going to spend on that. So AP reported that as, well, chloroquine kills. Chloroquine kills. It took you 10 minutes to try and verify that. Well, it took me 10 minutes to try and find the article they were referencing. It took me another half hour to verify that those numbers were bunk. This New York Post article that we got on the screen right now, that's obviously stupid. It's just obviously stupid. Yes. Clearly more obvious than anybody at the New York Times can figure out. But the stuff with like the VA study and the Santa Clara study, it's just not as obvious. And it's obvious when you sit down and read it and look at it. It's not as obvious from the headline. And it's really, really disheartening that kind of fake news can make itself far and wide, not just in the mainstream media, but along the non-traditional media as well. It's really, really, really disheartens me for the future. Really does. It makes me very, very uncomfortable. Dyer, make me uncomfortable. Make me not uncomfortable.
That's not in my job description.
Okay.
In fact, I'm pretty sure that my job is to make you uncomfortable and also torture you mentally. And then give you money for that.
Hashtag less me too, because he's giving me money.
Just makes you never mind. I think that's enough for tonight. But we'll be back on Saturday. Wait, it's already Saturday. We'll see you later today.
Saturday for you. Fuck.
Thank you guys. You've been wonderful, and we've been depressing. We'll see you guys later today. Dire Wolf out.
Should be signing off. Thank you guys. See you guys later. Watch out for the fake notes.
Boobs.